All right. Welcome to the Voices on VoiceOver podcast. I'm Neil Hess, your host. And today I'm joined by Rachel Alena. Hi, Rachel. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. My wife is unfortunately upstairs with our seven-month-old teething baby son. And so if you hear crying and footsteps and so on, you'll know exactly why. So
Perfect.
um, it's been,
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. He's an adorable little guy. But it's been an interesting adjustment being a first-time parent. So
I bet.
yeah. So just so people know, this is being recorded on Facebook Live right now. So if you like the Facebook page, you'll get notifications of when the interviews are happening. So you can watch live if you want to. It'll also be published as a podcast later on. And you can get all that information at voicesonvoiceover.com. But Rachel, we're here to hear more about you. So if you wouldn't mind, tell us how you got into it, how you I think everyone almost always falls into voiceover. So
Yeah.
how that happened for you.
Well, it was a long time ago. I graduated from the Dick Grove School of Music in Los Angeles, which is where I'm originally from. And at that time, I was doing session work. So I was singing for people. So I would go in, they would send me like a recording and say, okay, sound like Bonnie Raitt, and go in and sing this song in the Bonnie Raitt style. And then we're going to pitch this song to Bonnie Raitt. So for songwriters in different styles, whatever that style was. And so that was something that I was doing in the studios in Los Angeles. And at one of the sessions, I think it was just like an on hold message. Somebody asked me if I could record using my voice. And I was like, sure, I'll give that a try. And of course was like, hey, this is almost just as much fun as singing. And I used the same kind of skill set. So from there, I did some coaching with a voice acting coach and made a demo. And I've been doing it for, I'll just say over 20 years. I've been doing it a long time. I took a little break in between, but long time. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And so 20 for over 20 years, then you probably got in right as the internet started to be a thing, would be my guess, right?
That's correct.
And
I was doing it prior to the ISDN. The ISDN came in the 90s. So yeah, it was probably about that time. And actually when I switched over to working from my own home studio, it was a pretty tough transition for me. I was super intimidated and thought it was going to be an overwhelming transition. In fact, I hired a life coach for a year and cried for an entire year, once a week, saying I couldn't do it. It was too hard. And the life coach, I paid him all this money, and he would just say, you're a voice talent. Go do it. And I'd say, no, it's too competitive. There's too many people in the marketplace. I'm never going to figure out that technology. Of course, here we are. I don't know how many years, 8 years later. And it's fine. It all worked out just fine. You have to keep up with technology. So yeah, I was around during that transitionary time.
so you spent more than half of your time then, I'm sorry, doing the obvious mental math here, in studio before transitioning to the home studio.
Well, not quite, because I was very part-time. I was much more of a session singer than I was a voice actress when I first started out. Then I went and got some coaching. And then I did jobs and had some clients, but I was never a person that was on set for, like say a big radio station or anything. I would go in and do jobs as I got hired. And I had some core clients that I would do things for. But when I got back into it, for sure, I've done a lot more work now. I took some time off between doing it part-time in the past. Then I had my kids and helped my husband, and really didn't start growing my business until probably, I would say, 8 years ago. And at that time, I brought in some of those old clients that I had from before and started fresh because it had been quite some time. It was kind of like two different worlds. There's the world where you're in the studios. And I was in Los Angeles, and then I was in Portland, then I was in Dallas, to coming here to Colorado and working from my home studio, just two different lands, it seems like.
Yeah. And there's definitely a different feel too when you're, at home recording on your own. Cause I mean, that's where I started. And then, I spent time, being directed or in a booth or in a studio, and it's a different environment. For
It
me, I
is.
feel much more out of my comfort zone going into a studio. So I'm like, yeah, can we just do this from my home studio, please?
Yeah, see, and I love the challenge of it, probably because that's where I started and I love to sing. I still sing with my band in the studio. I love being in the studio and being challenged by having to do it right and by having the director say, okay, do it this way, do it that way. I like that. Sometimes I love being in my home studio, but it's a little isolating and I prefer to go down to the client studio, although that's happening less and less. Now people, they figure out you have a home studio and they say, just do it from your home studio. So yeah,
Yeah,
but I like that.
totally.
Yeah.
And so now you've fallen into your more regular work being e-learning. And so that's what I would love to hear more about is compared to commercial or, singing or whatever else, how e-learning is more unique, how it's different, how it might be better in some ways or more challenging in other ways in your
Sure.
experience.
So I do voice acting for everything. I do commercial work. I just finished an audiobook 3 weeks ago. So I do lots of different things, but I have been considering myself an e-learning expert for quite some time now, only because I wound up in a really blessed position of having some good long-term clients, like the Microsoft thing, and I do some stuff for Delta Dental and Alliance Residential, and a lot of things for medical companies and that sort of thing, where a nice thing about e-learning is you can become the voice of those trainings. For example, with the Microsoft, the internal recruiting training videos that I do, at this point, it's been about 2 years. And the benefit is it's a nice, steady income, because then they'll want a small piece changed. My voice is the original voice on there. So I will get new verbiage to put in there that they just place in. So it's nice. The one thing for me with those clients is I can be extremely busy one week and slow the next because I don't know what's coming. They can have a big project where, like, for example, Microsoft did a recruiting trainings for the universities. And they sent that to me, and that was a giant project for a period of time. And then poof, it was done. And at some point, they're probably going to update things, and then they'll call me back to make those updates. So it's a real kind of, I like to refer to it as a whale. You wind up with these big clients, but you have to keep marketing and e-learning because those people can ebb and flow. They'll find new voice talent. They might use you for a project. With Microsoft, one thing's a great example of this is I was doing their internal recruiting videos. Trainings. I keep saying videos. And that was in my normal e-learning voice. However, I do multiple voices. I do all kinds of character voices and such. And they sent me one day a script with somebody else's name on it. And I was like, this is kind of interesting. And I came to find out that they actually were having a new department for recruiting at their universities. So they were looking for a teenager. But they gave me a shot at doing the teenager voice. And I do a teenager voice. And so I was able to secure that work. But then I had the regular Microsoft stuff and then the university stuff with two different voices. And it was a little bit like Jekyll and Hyde, like, who am I, which day, what am I doing? And I do one script and do the next script. But that's an example of if you're a versatile voice talent and you really understand the craft of character development and all of that, it can certainly be used in e-learnings. I know I kind of randomly went off on a tangent there, but that's a really important thing for e-learnings. Really.
Oh no, that's actually I would love to hear a little bit more on that actually, because when I first started doing e-learning, I'm like, okay, I'm just reading these words out loud, but there really is. I mean, as you go on and you understand the scripts more, the way I would, read a script for, Time for Kids versus something for Johnson & Johnson or whatever, like an internal employee training or whatever. It's very different, and the tone and the sound and everything else. But you're the expert, so I want to hear more what you have to say about that.
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, for sure, I'm on a long-term project right now for a pharmaceutical company. I'm doing 9 modules for them, and within those modules, I am the voice of the pharmacist, which is a deep voice. I am the voice of the patient that comes to the pharmacist, which is I do a very high-pitched voice. And then I'm the voice of Mindy, who is the narrator. And so that's three different characters within the e-learnings. And it is acting. It's beyond just the trainings. I mean, you can do just a basic training. And in fact, with the basic training, I'll give you a good example of how important acting is. Not even needing to do different kinds of voices, but a lot of people that come for my coaching, they say, I want to do e-learnings. I really don't want to do commercial work. I really don't want to do audiobooks. And I'm like, I get that. And that's fine. But just know that it's not just reading. And if you're going to just do it just to read, your chances of really building a broad client base are probably pretty small, because they want people that can bring whatever they're saying to life. And here's a perfect example. I narrate for doctors, trainings for doctors through a company, and they just send them to me when they have them, and I do them. But back in, I want to say November of last year, I got a script from a company, and it was called, from the same company, it was called narrate this. It's called low APGAR scores. I did not know what low APGAR scores are. Looks like you do.
Yeah, unfortunately, I became familiar with them. Our son was born with a 1 APGAR score.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he had to be resuscitated actually when
I'm
he
so
was delivered.
sorry.
Yeah, that was the most terrifying moment of my life. But
I bet.
he's fine and he's
Oh my
screaming now.
gosh.
So, oh my gosh,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Well, so that's a perfect example. And I got that script. This is something that regularly happens. I get these scripts and I just read them. But I've been known to call hospitals to find out exactly what this topic is in detail and how you say these words. If I can't find them, Googled the low APGAR scores and discovered I was teaching doctors something extremely important. There was lawsuits, how to avoid lawsuits, how to console parents, all kinds of things, how to keep babies alive. And I was actually written up by them after that as being somebody that can interpret a script, because I am interested no matter what kind of a script, whether it's an e-learning, it doesn't really matter. Even if it's a data-driven internal gobbledygook, it's important to understand that you're talking to somebody, and there's somebody on the other end of that needs to hear what you're saying in a way that you can relate to them, kind of on a one-to-one level.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and those APGAR scores, yeah, they're important.
Yeah, apparently. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
No, I mean, it's something you learn about, and it's just a part of life. And so, if you don't mind sharing a few pointers on finding e-learning work, it seems like there's a lot of e-learning companies out there and there is opportunity, but it can be kind of hard to land them sometimes. So if you
For
don't mind
sure.
sharing your tips on that, I would love to hear that.
Everybody has to go on their own path, but it is hard to land them and it's hard to know where. I do know that there's a lot of these sites now, like Upworks and freelance, those kinds of things, where being a voice actor is different than the kind of voice acting you would do if you were doing commercial work through your agency and that sort of thing. And you can find some long-term work there. I mean, no matter what you do as a newbie voice talent, you are going to be auditioning up against other voice talent. But looking in the direction of where things are produced, and especially I always tell people, if you have an internal relationship with somebody that might be producing e-learnings, that's always a great place to start. I mean, the thing with Microsoft for me came as a referral from an old client. And of course, once you do land the job, do great work, turn it in a timely manner, develop a relationship. As you mentioned earlier in our phone conversation, relationships are key. So those e-learnings, it comes down to looking around and finding out who's producing them, and also some of those freelancer sites. And once you get those jobs, hold on to them if you can.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And it's always, I love hearing back from return clients. It's always like, yes, it's an affirmation of going, all right, they thought I did a good enough job. They want to come back and use me again. All
Absolutely.
right, cool.
I always, for e-learning, that's one thing I will say. I used to work in human resources on the other end of things. I worked in the department where we created the communications materials. And so when I do work with these companies, I pretend that I am an internal member of their team. That is always my goal. My goal is to be able to voice in whatever character they need, turn it around as quickly and efficiently, and do the best product that I can do, because I want them to think of me as just an extension of somebody that's in their office that maybe works remotely. That's the biggest advice I can give with those e-learnings.
Totally. Absolutely. And that, again, that comes back to those relationships.
Yeah.
Something that has developed over the past 5 years or so is, apps like Siri or, Google Voice, these kind of synthesized voices. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on whether they pose a big threat, so to speak, to the e-learning market for voiceover actors, or whether you think it's going to be a while before that's actually an issue to deal with.
Gosh, I wish I knew the answer to that, because that is an age-old question that voice talent have been asking. I remember that question being asked about 8 years ago. I was listening to thinking, when I was thinking about building my home studio and kind of getting back into it, I was concerned about that too. So I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that right now, the e-learnings that I do for that pharmaceutical company, I am given a guide track right now on video with a Siri-like voice. And I follow that track along with a script. But still, at this point, it's so impersonal that they need to hire a voice talent. And that happens often, that kind of gives you the guide. I don't know if there may be a time when lower level e-learnings and tutorials and such are done in that way. Kind of like maybe those whiteboard videos are now, where you have some that are just really kind of not the best quality. But the thing is that matching the tone and the pitch and the cadence of what you're trying to say, I don't know if that can ever be accomplished using a Siri type voice, only because a director would say, that APGAR score e-learning that I told you about, can you imagine that being voiced by a Siri like program? How's anybody going to connect with that?
Yeah, that would be almost borderline insulting, I would think.
Exactly. And there are things that, you teach people. We're all human beings. I don't know, but I know that for me, the best voice talent are the people that can connect with one person. And I just feel like there might not be enough of a connection there. But
yeah. And it's funny. I wrote a blog post a while back about I think it's called the uncanny valley, where these computer graphics are getting so realistic in the visual realm that when actually they get so close to looking like humans, but you can just tell they're not, that it actually causes a revulsion reaction, like a slight like bad taste in your mouth.
Does it really?
Yeah.
I know. I feel like that, but I thought it was just because I'm older.
Yeah, if memory serves, it's called the uncanny valley. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, if humans are built as such that something that's so close to human but isn't human, like those creepy, weird androids that you see like in Japan or in Saudi Arabia, or I don't know,
Yeah.
they just creep me out. I'm wondering if voices, synthesized voices, will become that same way. I'm wondering if the human physiology will react the same way auditorily. So
it makes sense to me. Right now, the best voice talent for e-learning are the ones that can connect. If you can take something that's a dry topic, like, data tables, and make them into something that actually makes sense to people, gets them excited, then you've done your job. So I'm not really sure exactly, like you said, how something like a computer can actually do that and inspire anybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
I don't know that they'll get there, at least not in our lifetime is my guess.
I hope not. Let's be positive.
Yeah, right. All right. So now this is my favorite part of the interview, because we get to know the guests a little bit better, and usually there's end up being some laughs. So this is the 5 fun questions.
Okay.
So
I'm ready.
Here we go. First question. What is the best or worst practical joke that you've played on someone or that was played on you?
Oh my gosh, a practical joke. Let me think about this. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Gavin? My son was knocking on the door there. The worst practical joke that was ever played on me was a long time ago when I was first with my husband. He was in the Coast Guard and we lived in Astoria, Oregon. Mm-hmm. And I was home alone, and he had been away, like on tour, wherever he was. And he was supposed to come back at a specific time. So I moved into our brand new apartment, super creepy place. It was right near the Goonies house in Astoria, very creepy. And I had been there for maybe a week. It had like yellow shag carpet and I had like all
Ah,
used furniture. We didn't have any money. And I was in there and I didn't know anybody. I just moved to that town. And he called me and we were chatting on the phone and he was telling me he'd be there next week. And all of a sudden something came up behind me and it was him. But I screamed bloody murder. I mean, I literally fell on the floor because I heard footsteps and turned around and there he was. So, that was probably that was a practical joke that I was like, oh my God, you could never do that again. Like it was horrible.
oh
He thought it
yeah.
was pretty funny though. When I fell on the floor like a fish. Yeah.
I understand. My wife startles real easily. So, honey,
That's how
if you
I
ever
am.
see this, I'm sorry. But so that's been
Maybe don't do that to her.
I've unintentional. No. No. I would pay for that.
Yeah.
All
It
right.
happened more.
Second question. Yeah. Right. All right. What makes your eyes roll every time you hear it?
Let's see. That's a tough one. What makes my eyes roll every time I hear it? Okay, I'm struggling with this. Let me think about that. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. What makes my eyes roll
I
every
try to
time I
find
hear
really
it?
unique questions.
Yeah, you do. Um, well, for me, I mean, this is just my personality. I really can't stand it when people brag, like
Hmm.
brag about
Hmm.
stuff that they have. That makes my eyes roll consistently. Like it's one thing to be like, oh, I've got this stuff and this is really cool and to share it out of excitement. But the people that just talk about like their wives' diamonds are bigger than yours, they've got a bigger car. I'm like, nobody cares. Maybe you care, but nobody else cares. That always makes my eyes roll because I'm like, just shut it. Just
Yeah.
exist with the rest of us. So yeah.
Yeah. Be a decent human being.
Be a
All
decent
right.
human being.
Third question. What are you interested in that most people aren't? Besides voiceovers, that doesn't count.
Um, well, I mean, I don't know if this counts that I sing in a band. Does that count, or are most people into a band? I
Uh,
don't know.
let's see. Let's ask our panel. That works. Yeah, that's fine.
Because I'm super interested in songwriting. Love it. I
Tell us
was
about your band.
playing
Tell us
hooky from
about your
work
band.
this morning. Huh?
Tell us about your band.
Well, I was just this morning, I played hooky from work because I work for myself and as voice talent, we can do what we want, right? So this
Hmm.
morning I sat down and my guitar player has written a new song called Paper Heart. And I was really just working on the lyrics a little bit. I just love good lyrics and I love anything with communication. But I am fascinated with people that are strong songwriters. And I'm a songwriter too. So, that's my thing. That's one thing that I absolutely love. And if you want to know what makes my eyes roll, write bad music. That will make my eyes roll. Like super trite lyrics, that will make
Yeah.
my eyes. I'll be like, come on, say something new. Like all of the new music that just talks about like degrading women and how much money you have in cars. I totally
Oh
get
yeah.
it. I get that that's cool, but I'm like, you could totally write about that, but then add something unique, like maybe how you felt like, I don't know, when somebody drove up next to you in their car. How did you feel about that versus what you have? So yeah, that
Hmm.
would make my eyes roll too. Back to your previous question.
That's fine. Uh, question 4. What outdoor activity haven't you tried but would you like or that you would like to?
Oh my gosh, I want a paddleboard. I was just up yesterday up in Marble, Colorado, and I saw the paddleboard there, and it was on the back of somebody's truck. And I was just talking to somebody, and I was like, "That is something. That's the next thing I'm going to do. Like that, I should have been doing that today." Yeah. Have you
Now
done that?
stand paddle. No, that's the one you stand on
Yeah.
and just go across like lakes. Well, I would assume that would be difficult in the ocean.
You can start on your knees though, so you don't have to start standing up.
Okay. Okay.
And I
So
keep getting
paddleboard.
chicken every time I try. I get out there, and someone's like, "Oh, you want to go?" But I need to just get out there and do it because it's on my list of things to do.
Yeah. Have you ever gone like bodyboarding or surfing or anything like that?
Well, yeah, I grew up in Southern California, so
Oh, well,
that for
okay.
sure is something I
Duh.
did. I used to do all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. We do. I like to do that when I go to Seaside. I was telling you about that. We're going to Seaside
Yeah.
later on, and so that's yeah. I'm looking
Isn't
forward
it
to that big
cold
time.
though? Isn't that water freezing?
Well, I got myself a wetsuit, so that way
Okay.
it's at
Okay.
least somewhat bearable.
Oh,
But yeah,
lucky.
compared to Southern California, yeah, it's freezing.
Yeah.
And then finally, and this one is going to be very interesting. What about the opposite sex confuses you the most?
Hmm.
Talk about
Let me think.
age old questions, men and women not being able to understand each other.
What about the opposite sex confuses me the most? Okay, I'm thinking about this. That's a tough one. I need a minute. I need a minute to think about
Okay.
this.
I'll see
Confuse
if I can
me
find the
the
Jeopardy
most.
theme.
Yeah. Uh, you know, it's funny because, and this is a generalization, of course, if you're going to talk about
Of course.
differences in sexes, but why is it that when I go on vacation, like with a couple girlfriends, the TV never comes on? We'll go hiking, we'll have lunch, we'll go out, we'll have some drinks, whatever we do. The TV never comes on. We can spend days there. We'll turn on music, we'll chit chat, we'll do whatever, but the TV never comes on. But men in general, you walk into a hotel room and that TV is on. Why is it? Am I right?
Yeah, it's either that or the computer goes on for me. I'm
Yeah.
pretty nerdy, but yeah, okay,
Like why? Because the girls don't do that usually. I mean, every time I go away with girlfriends, I don't think there's ever been once that the TV gets turned on or even electronics, really. We just do other stuff. We talk. Maybe that's the problem. We're just talking too much. We don't ever turn it on.
speaking of generalizations.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Might as well since you started it.
Oh man. All right. Well, Rachel, thank you so much. And if people want to get a hold of you, either to hire you for voiceovers or to get you for coaching, where should they go?
Well, they can go to my website is rachelalena.com, RACHELALENA. You can also email me at info@rachelalena.com or find me on Facebook, although that might be a little bit harder. But you can always find me that way or
Okay.
yeah, my website. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. And thank you everyone
Thank you.
for listening and watching. If you have
Thank
any
you.
guests, yeah, you're welcome. And if you have any guest suggestions, let me know.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care. Thanks, Rachel.
Okay, take care. Thanks. Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye.